of Project Sanity. I'm your host, Richard, aka Progressive Greens, and with me is Nis, some co-host. And we have a great show lined up for you today. We got a lot of folks coming up. We got some interviews with a delegate talking about what happened at the Democratic Convention. We're going to be recapping that pretty thoroughly, speaking with a couple. And
Project Sanity.
just make sure I mute myself there. I had the feed up, so sorry about that. Anyway, we're also going to be speaking with Chris Wiggins, who is running for a congressional seat out of California in the U.S. Congress. We're going to be going through a few clips from the convention, and finally we're going to be finishing with some coverage of talking about the Green Party and what's going on with their convention. That's going on this week and just started today. So before we get to all of that, we have Nis with some headlines. So go ahead and get Nis up here with me. And there we are. And Nis, go ahead and let us know what we have going on in the news.
Well, hello all, and thank you for joining us for another edition. This is the first edition after our week-long coverage of the Democratic Convention. I have no idea how we survived it, but we did, and we actually managed to make a show as well. So very excited about this and about what will be coming in the upcoming weeks. But before that, we have a bunch of news for you. The Guardian has issued an article stating that William Chapman murderer, he's a man in Virginia who was shot. His shooter, a cop named Stephen Rankin, has just been convicted of first-degree murder, and it is one of the first cases in which this has happened in recent years. Now, of course, what will happen? I assume that the results of the trial is going to be appealed to federal court, but so far, at least, he has been found guilty of manslaughter, which carries with it a maximum sentence of 10 years. The defense attorney stressed Stephen Rankin's many years of servitude to the people, and that sentencing him to 10 years would not bring back William Chapman, who was shot dead. William Chapman had been accused of shoplifting. He was unarmed. In his pockets they found barely anything, and he was in a scuffle. According to the police officer, he was in a scuffle with him, fisticuffs, when the police officer drew his weapon and shot him. One of the points in which he stressed self-defense was that the taser was out of his reach, so he had no recourse but to shoot him. The prosecutor, however, characterized it as bringing a gun to a fist fight and saw it as overt murder to even consider pulling a trigger in this case. The jury was not allowed to be informed of Stephen Rankin having shot another unarmed man, a chef, an immigrant, some years back, but he was caught on camera, on his own camera, stating that this was the second unarmed person he had shot to the store clerk of where William Chapman supposedly had committed shoplifting, although nothing was found on him. Keeping it within law enforcement, Jordan Smith from The Intercept reports that a very old case that most people in Texas have heard of, and many people outside of Texas, Jeff Wood, who had been falsely accused of having murdered one of his friends, but has since been proven not to have killed anyone, but after that had been proven, run out of appeals, is about to be executed. His execution date is not far off, and The Intercept is trying to bring light to this travesty of justice, where a provenly innocent man who has simply run out of appeals is about to be executed. Also from The Intercept, John Schwartz and Lee Fang has written an incredible article on Citizen United and how Citizen United has made it possible for outside money to come into the elections in the United States. There's actually on AP also been a couple of articles today and in other newspapers, been articles about how there was one about a GOP lawyer who had brought a Chinese company in to help fund GOP elections, and other stories of the same nature. So Chinese money, not Russian, seems to be flowing into American elections this election cycle. To keep it even closer, to go back to justice and what is happening in that world, Alice Sperry, also from The Intercept, has written an article where the Black Lives Matter movement, they have issued some series of, I wouldn't call them demands, but a series of redresses that needs to be met and answered. So one of the big sticking points most people have had on the Black Lives Matter movement is the same sticking point they had on the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was, well, where are your concrete demands? What are the policies that you want us to enact? What are your demands? What do you want us to do to satisfy your needs? And it seems like Black Lives Matter have now answered this in many regards. They are not just talking about criminal justice reform. They are talking about a redress which my skimming through of their points would address the issue from as many points as possible. You can see quite a few notes taken from Michelle Alexander, among other inspirational sources. More with the election, from The Intercept, they have a very good, well-written story by Saeed Jilani on Donald Trump's, what would we call it, a small skirmish with Paul Ryan yesterday and today, where Donald Trump refused to endorse Paul Ryan. He basically used the same rhetoric that Paul Ryan used about endorsing Donald Trump, where he said, well, I'm not ready to endorse him at this point, but it looks like he's doing a great job. Well, Donald Trump said basically the same about Paul Ryan's campaign. Interestingly, though, Donald Trump's running mate has endorsed Paul Ryan's bid for re-election. This could again point to the fact that there are quite a few of the bigwigs, or at least big names in the GOP, that have yet to endorse Donald Trump, or at least have yet to stump for him. In other news on the election, Microsoft has pitched a technology, among others that they've pitched it to is Politico, the famous website and web paper that breaks down election numbers. They pitched to them a facial expression reading technology that can be used at political rallies to read the facial expression of thousands of people at the same time and give you an overview of this. And this goes to show you that Big Brother doesn't need to be the government. Google and Microsoft seems to be doing quite a good job on their own. Of course, it's not the technology in itself that is the problem. It is the utilization of it. But this is, yet again, a piece of technology that in the wrong hands can be abused. And I would believe that if this piece of technology reached either of the two big parties, it would be in the wrong hands. In other election news, and also a topic that we are going to touch on quite a lot today, Democracy Now! Hosted a debate between Robert Reich, who endorsed Bernie Sanders but has now started campaigning for Hillary Clinton, and Chris Hedges, who also endorsed Bernie Sanders and is now campaigning for Jill Stein. If you have not seen this debate yet, go into our video description, find the link for Democracy Now!, and you will see a very interesting debate between two very intelligent and eloquent, unlike me, eloquent people. And very breaking news on the AP wire, Lisa Lera and Catherine Lucy has done an amazing breakdown of how Hillary Clinton is now wooing a new group of voters, Republicans. It only took her a week, but it didn't even take her a week. She had an interview with Charlie Rose the day after the convention, in which she immediately drove not just to the center, but quite to the right of it. Throughout the Democratic primary, she did everything to basically write the word progressive on her forehead, and was fighting with Bernie Sanders over being the most progressive, and she refused that she in any way had been pulled to the left by Bernie Sanders, and that she was the same person she had always been, and she had been elected on that, and that she was a center-left, and she emphasized center. The Democratic Party is a center-left party, seeing it as a centrist party, which is in line with the Bill Clinton vision of the Democratic Party, the New Democrats, but not in line with the FDR Democrats or Bernie Sanders Democrats in any way, shape, or form. But she is now not only positioning herself for independence, but is doing everything she can now to try and claim Republican voters. So there you have it, folks. Hillary Clinton immediately running from the base that Bernie Sanders had gathered, and that is now on by Bill Maher being called unpatriotic for not voting for Clinton or working for Clinton getting elected. And the latest bit of news is also off the AP Wire, where Donald Trump is reported to have accused Obama for rigging the general election. He's gone off him trying to, quote-unquote, help Bernie Sanders by claiming that Hillary had rigged the primary. He's now saying that Obama is rigging the general election. Now, Obama is, of course, in every way, shape, or form, vehemently opposing this notion. But taken in context with the New York Times piece that shows some commentary from the Trump supporters at Trump rallies, which shows the reaction to when Donald Trump says that that Obama has been the most divisive president in recent history, how he's divided up the country and split it in two. I would put that on Fox News, CNN, and the two political parties, not on Barack Obama, President Obama. But the response from his voters was quite emphatic, and used the N-word, among others, in their opposition to hearing Barack Obama's name spoken. And to hear him now already accusing President Obama of rigging the general election before it's even properly underway, well, you can see he's gearing up to keep the anger going post-election if he should lose it, if he should lose the general election. So yeah, that's the news that we decided to cover today, and that hasn't really been covered much by mainstream media yet, with the exception of the one Trump story. Richard and Dave, if you want to get in here and comment on any of this.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in, and it's good to hear of a conviction when, in such an instance, like you mentioned at the top of the news. Not enough of those, in my opinion, but one is more than none, which is the going rate, more or less, despite the more ridiculous situations that we've seen in quite so many circumstances. And even in the North Carolina shooting, where the man was running from the police after getting pulled over, resulting or from something to do with a brake light, that guy still isn't convicted. He's currently on house arrest, so it takes a long time. Justice doesn't seem to be swift in these situations, and as you mentioned, it'll probably go on to appeal, so hopefully those turn out in an appropriate way, I suppose.
But I find it interesting how when it's not a police officer, then the rhetoric is, oh, what will it serve to put him in prison? It won't bring that person back to life, and he's been a good citizen and serves the civic society. But when it's an ordinary citizen who may have also served the civic society, it's throw the key away. He murdered him, or she murdered him, or whatever. an interesting flip of the script that
Absolutely.
happens.
And then you also mentioned the facial recognition. I thought that was interesting. That will definitely help certain politicians. I can imagine, like Hillary Clinton, be able to pander more real time. You know, she'll be able to look at some sort of heads up
Well,
display
she
that
doesn't have an audience at her rallies, so she can't use it.
I suppose. Well, I mean, she'll only need minimal processing strength, it appears. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe some of the. I've seen some of the pictures. I mentioned some folks have seen it on Twitter or elsewhere of how the media is reporting the rally, and then if you zoom out from behind, what the rally actually looks like, and along with lots of other things that we've covered or that we're covering, it's feeling more and more Orwellian. I hate even going there, but at the same time, it feels ridiculous. Like, at what point do we stop pretending that we're obviously they're trying to manipulate us? It feels like I've heard others here, Project Sanity, describe it as like a commercial. Feels like a commercial, and it's getting more and more over the top and more ridiculous, and not in the comical, messing with Sasquatch kind of way, but
No.
more in the head-on, apply directly to the head type way.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I mean, other than doing what we're doing and what other independent medias are doing, like The Intercept and like Democracy Now, I simply don't know what to do about it. It's pervasive. It's people keep talking about Fox News, and I actually think Fox News is doing more damage in new ways than they even themselves consider, because they are so much the bad guy that, in contrast to them, everyone else looks like a saint. But CNN and MSNBC and ABC does the exact same thing as Fox News does, but they're just not that good at it. Now, vis-a-vis the opinion shows on Fox News and how they work, like the Sean Hannity show and the No Spin Zone with Paul O'Reilly and stuff like that, that is insanity on a different level. But I mean, you basically have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to see that. Yeah, but I mean, in regards to the conviction of Stephen Ranking, I gotta say, like, I remember one of the most famous stories about police brutality against unarmed black people. Why can't we just all get along? As a quote, those police officers were all in orange jumpsuits. They were all convicted of excessive use of force and many other things, and then a federal court sprung them. And what was it that happened then? I forget.
I believe some people were a little upset, and
Where? Oh, right, the L.A. riots. Right,
yeah.
South Central L.A. was on fire for a couple of days. Yeah.
So ideally, hopefully, we can avoid any situation like that. And it's I've come to the conclusion recently that it makes sense how we've managed to get worse in what seems in a lot of different areas as a result of exactly what we're seeing pounded into our face this election, which is we just picked the less bad choice. And so long as you just have to be less bad than the other person, then as long as both people are getting progressively more bad,
Mm-hmm.
then it just gets worse. And there's no reason to get any better because all you have to do is be less bad than the new worse person, which Trump has set a new bar for how bad an opposition candidate could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, which, I mean, and Hillary did the same thing, only superseded by Trump by Trump.
Yeah, and speaking of Hillary, there's a piece out there floating around social media that they've tried to dress up as being a pro-Bernie person who's now pro-Hillary, and there's this very long post about why was I against her so much? Oh, it's just all right-wing propaganda that the left is now endorsing. It's like, no. She's a basically honest and good, intelligent woman. Why was I so opposed to her? I was just caught up in the entire Bernie thing. And it's like, no. You're not a basically honest person when you mischaracterize your position on almost everything and then change your mind as the opinion polls change on the subject. You're not a basically honest person when you go, I landed in Bosnia under sniper fire. No, you didn't. You were in Bosnia. That's impressive enough, but you had to add under sniper fire. You were not under sniper fire.
it was just misspeaking, misremembering something that didn't happen. I mean, just I'm sure Brian Williams has a great explanation for it. She can just use one of his.
Yeah.
I don't I just really, and with also the FBI Comey came out and said basically couldn't confirm that she told the truth to anyone except for the FBI. Didn't want to back the idea that what she was saying in public matched what she was telling the investigators, and everybody that saw what he said and saw what she said, CNN, all the fact checkers all broke it down, and yet she's still out there going to rallies. She just went out to one yesterday and probably going to go out to more in the future, saying, "Oh no, he confirmed that whatever I told you guys was the truth," which is the just counterfactual to reality in such a way that it's even the Washington Post wrote an article saying that they were kind of taken aback by the boldness to stick with something that had been so roundly called basically a lies in as many ways as you can through the news, which makes it to where I can't trust, in my view, can't trust either one of the candidates, which should seem to me to be a more perilous situation than it seems that the media wants to paint it as. It's like, well, yeah, Trump's really bad, but Hillary's not as bad, so we should be thrilled to be able to pick her and knock out that whole first woman president thing too while we're at it. Instead of, wait, these are two terrible candidates. What is wrong with our political system that
Yep.
these are the two that we nominated? That should be basically all the media should be talking about from now until November, and let the horse race sort itself out on its own, in my opinion.
Yeah, we basically have the choice between a rock glued to a head and the second Nixon. It's like I look at this and I despair because it's going to be more fracking. It's going to be worse for the environment. It's going to be more flip-flopping. Like Hillary Clinton has never had an opinion that she couldn't run away from 2 minutes after she voiced it. It's going to be more of everything. Now, the question is, what are we going to do about it? And that is hopefully some of the things that we're going to examine in the pre-recorded interview with a former Bernie delegate and with Adair in the later hours. But before we get into all of that, do the chat have anything they want to discuss?
Yeah, well, you check in with the chat. Just to remind folks that we're waiting on Christopher Wiggins, who is running for a seat out in California for the U.S. House of Representatives. And he's just running in a meeting currently, and hopefully he's able to join us before too long, so we'll go to that. But what we'll likely be doing is going to that interview that Nis mentioned with Chad, who is was a delegate, national delegate for Bernie Sanders, and is also a well-known figure over here in Washington as far as in the Democratic political circles go. And so we're going to get some of his opinions about what happened during the convention, as well as some thoughts about where we can go from here. We'll start with the first half, and then if Chris Wiggins is able to join us, we'll break that up. If he's still running behind, we'll go ahead and finish out the second half of that and come back with Chris. But just want to remind you and thank you guys for tuning in, watching us either on the Benjamin Dixon Show channel or if you're watching us on our new channel over at YouTube/Project Sanity. I want to thank you, and thanks all the folks that have subscribed so far. We're working on getting some more stuff up there. It looks like the interview is just about ready, so we'll be going to that just momentarily. We'll make sure to get that sized up for us. And before doing that, Nis, go ahead. I was getting through some plugs there.
No, there's lots of conversation, just no comments or questions that is easily taken a hold of. But in the interest of plugging, my mind just shut down. In the interest of plugging, go to projectsanity.org. It's a redirect to our YouTube channel, or just go to YouTube/Project Sanity and find our channel. If you like what we do, go there, subscribe. Within the end of the year, we will be moving off of the Benjamin Dixon Show channel and onto our own channel. So if you like our show, if you like what we do, please subscribe to our new channel so that you'll get all upcoming events there, and also all the interviews that we bring on our show. We won't always be able to bring the full interview of pre-recorded interview. it depends on the timing of our show, how our rundown is put together. But the full interview of any interview we do will always be up on our channel in its full and unedited version. So if you want to be able to have access to those as well, you should go to our channel on projectsanity.org. Okay, so other than that, I want to mention, I know that the sniper fire in Bosnia comment is always very popular, and it is from back in the event is from back in the 90s, and the comment from later than that. But I would like to say that it is very rare for a person like Hillary Clinton to be caught in an outright lie. It's not how she lies with lies, it's how she avoids the truth, it's how she doesn't answer directly. Now, Hillary Clinton may personally be for Medicare for all. She may be for the public option, but she never fights for it. She's never voiced for it. She may be, in the '08 election, she was pro-gun and pro-gun rights. In 2016, she is pro-gun restriction laws. And it's in her bid for Senate, and in 2008 as well, she believed that a marriage was between a man and a woman, and in 2015 she's all of a sudden for it. These are the things that about Hillary Clinton that makes her untrustworthy. Now, people can say, oh, but everyone can change their minds. Yeah, they can. So let's give her the benefit of the doubt that she simply changed her mind and that she evolved. Well, I would, in the most basis way, doubt anyone that evolves that much so often and so much, because it shows you that she does not have a concrete sediment that she stands on, where she has her values and information. It shows you that she's willing and able to be re-informed, that she's able to re-evolve into not being pro-gay marriage now that she thought of it, or now that she saw how it looked. She finally, during the primary, came out against the TPP as it looked, and in the Charlie Rose interview, and since then, she's already starting to backpedal her opposition to the TPP.
Yeah, it's reasonably one of the things that's been the problem in my view with Hillary's statements and how she handles either changing of positions or when she quote misspeaks is she's notorious and habitually uses the "I'm sorry you're offended," I'm sorry you didn't understand what I meant, I'm sorry that those types of apologies that wouldn't pass the muster on a third grade playground is habitually what she does. And if you look at her apologies, go to the apology for Iraq, the apology for Nancy Reagan, the Nancy Reagan comments, the apology for any of those things. You look at them and you look at the types of apologies. If she even says I apologize or I'm sorry, it's in that kind of context. And when she changes a position, like you mentioned with gay marriage, she doesn't give us the substance about it. It's like if I I think Brandon used the story. It's like basically I was a young kid. I thought gay marriage was icky or whatever. Then I grew up. Got past being or got like to being a teenager or whatever, and realized that was kind of childish, and that's why it's not one of the reasons it's not an issue for me anymore. Hillary hasn't taken us through that type of evolution of this is why I came out and said marriage has been and was or is between a man and a woman, but now I'm totally fine with it being between two men or two women. What changed in between there? And that's what Hillary never seems to provide us. Whatever position is changing, like for instance TPP, it's like I thought it was the gold standard, and now I'm against it ambiguously because of some things that I can't articulate or let you know or show you as an example of this is why I thought it was the gold standard. Then I saw this, and now I think it's not. And until this changes, then I consider it not. No, it's going to be some vague environmental or worker protections that we know throughout the history of trade agreements aren't going to be enforced in any type of realistic way that genuinely improves the quality of life for those workers or for the environment, as we see with, for instance, the Panama deal that we saw a while back and how that's affected farmers. And we covered that a while back in one of our previous shows. But with that, I'm just going to go ahead and Dave, if you want to get that chat, and then if you want to do me a favor and just expand it so that we don't get the double logo going there, that would be excellent. And then we'll go ahead and we'll watch that along with you guys, and we will come back between there, and hopefully Chris Wiggins will have joined us. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get into the second half. So just a moment, and we'll get that ready for you. Until then, just want to thank you again. This is Chad Lucas, Washington delegate for Bernie Sanders. Also, been working for the pro Bernie campaign for a while. And so once we have that ready, we will get that up there. Just give us a moment here.
We should mention that Chad has been loosely affiliated with us in the past, and he has helped out a little bit with us. And that we are going to help him make a show on the other side of the convention when he's caught his breath. So that's just in the interest of full and fair disclosure. Okay, Dave, roll it.
Now, I think you have an interesting perspective because you know a lot of Bernie supporters have come into the party just recently, but you've been around with the party for a very long time, and as a supporter of Bernie Sanders, you see that there's kind of this big conversation right now about who are we going to vote for? Are we going to switch to the Greens? Are we going to back Hillary? Are we going to write in Bernie? Are we going to not do any of those options? Are we just going to stay home? But I kind of want to know, personally for you, can you, in good conscience, support Hillary or the down-ticket Democrats as part of a defeat Trump tactic, or as a part of a Dems are better than reps tactic?
Well, the way I answer that question whenever I'm asked is pretty much the same. How I vote on my ballot in November is my business, just as how you vote on your ballot is your business. I have my priorities. I have my top issues. I have my personal relationships with a lot of these candidates, and I have my constitutional rights to vote. So does everybody else. What I would say is that everyone needs to feel however they are comfortable voting. I'm not going to be somebody who says you have to vote for a particular candidate or you have to vote against a particular candidate. Personally, I hate voting against something. So I try to look at the situation on every ballot and decide what am I voting for and how do I cast my vote to vote for it. Looking at the difference between the top two nominees for the major parties, I can see a big difference, and I can see what I would be voting for in terms of, protection of gay rights, protection of immigration, things like that. So, like I said, how I vote is my business, but look for what you're voting for and vote to protect the things that you really care the most about. If the American Care Act, ACA, is something that you really support, which candidate will support it, which candidate will maintain it, which candidate might improve it, and which candidate will eliminate it. And just go through any of the issues and make your own decision based on the issues. That's how I do it.
I think that's a great point to bring up, because a lot of the arguing right now is more about the past of candidates or their character, and it's less about what policies will they actually enact. And I think that's
right.
very, very important to bring up. And I also appreciate that you're not saying you have to stick with one party or another party. You're saying vote who you feel like. And I hear a lot of sentiment right now about you should vote for this person, and I really appreciate that you're saying that that's your own decision.
It is. It is our own decision. I mean, it's our right to vote how we feel, and based on the situation. All I ask is that we use critical thinking to make the best choice. And I can present my own view, and as we get closer, I'll be more and more comfortable doing that as I get further away from the convention. But everybody has to make their own choice, and nobody should be forcing anybody else to move one way or the other based on issues that might not be their priorities. I mean, I've got a lot of friends in the gay community, and gay rights is a huge one right now, and I really respect their feeling of, if he who shall not be named gets into office, then their marriages will automatically and magically just go away. I don't think that's going to happen because it's a court decision, not an executive branch decision, but I can understand their feelings on that. And, the climate change issue, which is another one of my top issues. What would a Republican administration do to help curb climate change? Well, I can tell you, they would do absolutely nothing, and we would see things get worse very, very quickly. But regardless of how I mean, here's the thing. When I joined the Bernie Sanders campaign last April, when he announced, I looked up a couple websites and I found one that really made sense to me, isidewith.com. And I plugged in all of my issue positions and I said, compare me with the candidates. And Bernie Sanders got like 93, 95%. And Hillary was at 83, 85%. And at that point in time, Ted Cruz was looking like a potential contender, and he was at 9%. So, it doesn't, at that point, I could see, okay, I may not like some of the things that Hillary does, but am I going to choose someone who hits me at 9% or someone who hits me at 80% if I can't push Bernie Sanders over the top? The issues mean that much to me. The future of this country means that much to me.
So we've been kind of talking about who you're going to vote for and your opinion on people voting. So obviously part of the contention about who we should all vote for and what everybody is trying to give advice about is because of the recent email leak scandal and all that going on. Now, as a longtime member of the Democratic Party, do you feel the party can be saved, or do you think that it is just way too far gone?
I think it can be saved. I think personally that the Democratic Party has more potential as an agent of change, and I mean progressive change, than any other party out there. I've been involved since 2003. I know the people in leadership, at least here in Washington and a number of others from around the country. I know the tendency towards corruption and incumbency. And I have to say that there needs to be a balance. We need the new energy. We need all of the new ideas. But at the same time, we need the experience that comes with the previous generation. I had a number of friends in Philadelphia who were Hillary delegates. And they looked at what we were doing and how we felt. And they said, you know what? I was you 30 years ago or 40 years ago. And I know what you're feeling, and I know how far we were able to push it. How can I help you push it even further? Because we've gotten as far as we can. How far can you go? I got that question a lot, and I really appreciate it. And those people have been through the major changes in the Democratic Party where we've created a charter and we established rules. They've been working this for the past 40 years, and now they want to help us. So I'm going to be trying to bridge the gap between all this new energy and the old guard that really knows how things were set up, because we're not starting with a blank slate. We never do. Like I said, there has to be a balance. And there's an old saying from an old book, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So a parallel with that is let the politician who is free of corruption point out other politicians who are not free. We have to fix this from the inside. We have to stay involved. Can we do it? I think we can. And I think we can because I have done it, at least at the local level.
That was an amazing answer, Chad. I really appreciate that. It was insightful for me. As someone who I've always kind of enjoyed politics from afar, but I never took that step to get involved. And I feel blessed that I do have a mindset that I want to stay involved, but I feel like there is a lot of people that are kind of going to fall out. And so I think it's awesome that you're talking about how it is beneficial to stay in this game, and that there is a chance that we can save the mess that's been made, or clean it up, and we can be the
Yeah.
janitors. I'm,
Yes.
I'm there for that. So
And the only way that we're going to be able to clean up this schoolyard is if we stay in the schoolyard to get the work done.
I agree, man. We gotta stay here, and we gotta keep fighting. And
So one of the stencils that we used to create T-shirts on the Thursday of the convention said DNC leaks, and we used it as a hashtag. Another one was Justice for All, and a third one was Our Party. And what we meant by that, by any of them, was on the DNC leaks. The DNC violated their own charter. The charter of the Democratic National Committee says that the DNC is required to be fair to all primary candidates, period. They did not do that. They're dealing with the fallout. A lot of people are losing their positions justifiably, and they're cleaning house. Whether that sticks, we'll have to see, because we also have to realize that Hillary Clinton has 270 electoral votes to get, and she has to do whatever she can within the rules, within the law, whatever, to be able to get that electoral vote. And electoral politics is really rough. We felt that all of last week, because the momentum was already starting to build, saying, get the heck on board. I can understand that. We were not ready for it, and we felt insulted by it, but I can understand why they did it. I just didn't like it.
All right, and there you saw Eric Miller with Chad Lucas, and you saw Chad's feelings on trying to change the Democratic Party from within. He mentioned some things like if you want to clean up the playground, you got to you have to stay out on the playground, and I think he brings up a lot of interesting and valid points about working within the Democratic Party. And I think we're getting Eric set up here. Just got to get his camera oriented so that we can see him all well and good. But Nis, I don't know if you were able to watch that as well. If you were able to catch some of what Chad was talking about, but as far as working within the Democratic Party for change, if you had some
Well,
thoughts.
in my opinion, the whole problem with working from within something is that intimates that you have to be actually swallowed up by whatever it is that you're working from within. So, let's look at the Clintons from the most positive way we at all can. So Bill Clinton, he ran in the primary the first time around on FDR's platform, basically. He was slinging lefty liberal guns like no other, and his oratory was amazing. And then he wins the nomination. And then he's surrounded by political experts who tell him, that was amazing. Oh my God, you clinched that nomination. No one thought you could do it, and you did it. That was so good. Now you have to win the general election. Well, yeah, I'm just going to do the same thing. No. You can't do that. You're going to need independence. You can't talk like that. Independents won't vote for you. It'd be too hard. It was too risky. You can't. You have to do this other thing. So, I mean, it presupposes climbing the greasy pole. You get greasy. So I don't know if it is actually possible. You can. Martin Luther in the 1500s tried to reform the Catholic Church, and he couldn't. After Protestantism had been established completely as a new version of Christianity, they tried to do some reforms in the Catholic Church afterwards, after the fact, but the reform never really came around, and you had, like, the Catholic Church. it's basically only with this Pope that the Catholic Church entered the 1900s and came close to entering the 2000s. So, I mean, I don't know. I won't say the people who are working to reform the Democratic Party are working in vain, and that what they're doing is ineffectual, because I don't know how much worse it would have been without those people in there, without the Elizabeth Warrens and Bernie Sanders and the truth tellers and that tells truth to power and who campaign and advocate issues no matter how popular or unpopular they are. But at the same time, I got there is a comment from Joy Spats. We need a third, fourth, and fifth party. I believe that is more than reforming the Democratic Party and making it into what, let's say, 30% of the population would agree with it should be. I would rather have a party that represents that 30%. I would rather have a overhaul of the electoral system so that it's not a winner-takes-all system.
Yeah, I think that's the issue that we face, is that in reality we don't have an opportunity for viable alternative parties. All they do is they weaken, unless you manage to get them to divide up among equally, so that you're taking away from the major two parties at, at a rate that's consistent with each other, so that neither party gains an advantage as a result, due to the first past the poll and the other electoral foundations that we have. So really what we're looking at, the viability of the Green Party resorts on either kind of the model that you mentioned as existing outside of the main church, forcing eventually on a very long time horizon as some sort of pivot toward to capture some of the new reformations pointed out by this new movement, or to supplant the Democratic Party, to replace it in the two-party system with the Green Party. And so from that perspective, it looks as though we're analyzing, is it easier to replace the Democratic Party with a new party that has a new foundation of building of power structures, as to avoid the greasy pole, as you put it, or do we use the fact that there's already a pole within the Democratic Party, albeit greasy, and throw enough bodies at it until we degrease the pole that way? to just totally butcher that analogy and just beat it.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, I think there's room for a right-wing party in America, so the Democratic Party should stay. I'm not talking about replacing it. Like, there's a need for a voice for right-wing extremism, but there should at the same time also be a leftist party. Now, in my opinion, the Republican Party, through gerrymandering and through dirty tricks, had been able to make sure that an absolute minority has stayed politically in the majority in the most absurd cases. So that means that the Democratic Party is continuously losing. They're selling their soul to lose to the Republican Party, which is underrepresented in comparison to themselves. So I would rather say that what we should do is actually say, okay, the Democratic Party has almost half of the power in the country, so let's force them, by continuously costing them even more elections through the Green Party, let's force them to reform the system so that they can politically exist. And you do that by constantly voting for a third-party candidate, so that you force the hand of the Democratic Party to actually say, okay, we have to reform the system, or we are going to become completely politically irrelevant.
And I think what that takes, and I do want to make sure to get Eric in here, since he did actually talk with Chad, and so I want to get his opinions, and it looks like he's got his cam set. But I did want to mention that I think it's a two-prong effort, in which you need to have a faction of folks that are diehard supporting of the Green and the alternative, because they believe that's the only way that we can clean up the mess. And then we need folks like Chad was describing, people that have been a part of the Democratic Party for 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, and have seen all of the changes that it's gone through, and seen the bad side, and have come to the conclusion that they want that new energy, but they're surrounded by peers who don't have that same mindset. and so that they need that new energy to be both part of the Democratic Party, but then they need to also be able to point towards the Greens and to what other organizations are out there and say, we can get these people in our tent, but we have to listen to them. We can't just browbeat them into supporting us because by threatening them with a worse alternative. That's not going to be the effective method. And right now, so that means the people that are there have to stay there. That means that they need some new blood there, but that also means that there needs to be another prong that's out there putting pressure on the party, like as you kind of describe it from the Green. Whether there's enough people to do both of those, I think is a matter of engagement rather than a matter of how many folks there are. I think that there's enough people out there, but a lot of them are tuned out and haven't wanted to engage on either side of that battle. But Eric, I did want to get you in here. So Eric, your thoughts on both what we've shared so far and then also your interview experience.
So I just kind of want to stick by what you guys are saying, and I think it's Joy made the comment that we need a third, fourth, fifth. I think we need a sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th party. A democracy is about choices. That's the baseline for what a democracy should be. And right now, when you have two choices, I can't remember who said it, but somebody said we only have one more choice than Russia does. So it really doesn't seem like that much of a democracy when you only have two choices. And I think we need to go to a system where, like Washington State, we do the top two in the primary, go on, where your political party doesn't matter. It's not one Republican and one Democrat. It's the top two or the top four vote getters that move on. And I think it's important to think about these type of things and how we can change them.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like a top four, particularly in the presidential race, in that if we had four candidates, whether it was within the same party or within separate parties, that would have some benefit to it. Even if the parties can still do their thing, but if if we had that option available towards us, and I noticed one of the things that I guess we'll talk a little bit more about later on, that CNN has at least opened up one of their town hall platforms for the Green Party, and I believe they also did a Libertarian one, or are doing one, but on the 17th, CNN is going to be hosting a town hall for Jill Stein and her new VP choice, whose name escapes me at the moment, but that will be on the 17th, and so that's better, but it's not the debate stage where it'll get the kind of eyes. Go ahead there.
Well, I think the rules about getting on the debate stage with the Republicans and the Democrats are just ridiculous. When you think about needing 15%, 10% to 15%, that's pretty outrageous. Even if you just put the cap at 3%, it's not like you're going to have 20 candidates who get 3%. And I think it would be way more fair. I understand needing some kind of guideline for who can make the debates because you don't want 300 people up there and one of them in a clown outfit. I mean, we don't need that. I get it. But if you set the polling threshold at 3 to maybe 7% at the max, then you're only going to have legitimately viable candidates who have infrastructure on that debate stage. And so I don't see a real issue with that. And going back to the things Chad said, is he's got a wonderful vision on how to fix things from the inside. And I think that if people want to go that route, I will totally respect that. And I haven't made my decision on a personal level on what I'm going to do yet. But I do think that we can't close the door on the third parties. We become such loyalists that we're like, oh, if you're not in the Democratic Party, then get away from me, shoo fly. There's no way that you know how I feel. And I don't think that this disconnection is beneficial to our country and its democracy in general. And we talk about unity within the parties. What about unity in general? What about unity between like-minded people who might choose Jill Stein or Hillary Clinton? Like maybe one person likes Jill Stein, maybe one person likes Hillary Clinton. Why can't they get along? I don't get this loyalist division that's been happening because there's these two political parties and people want to divide because they want one party or the other. And if you're outside of those parties, suddenly you're a tinfoil hat kind of guy.
Yeah, it's gotten to a point that does seem quite ridiculous as far as you have to be a part of this club, gang, clique, whatever. And if you aren't, then we can't really listen to or respect your opinion. And it looks like we do have Chris Wiggins joining us now. It just looks like he's going to be getting set up. But so we'll be speaking with him shortly when he's ready.
All right.
Looks like Brandon might want to get in here real quickly. So if you can, you may take us just a moment. We'll get you on here, and then we're going to be going with Chris probably right after that if he gets his camera working for us. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something while Chris gets set up. Make sure he has enough time to get everything. You know, I think that when you talk about reforming it from the inside, you have two things going at the same time. You have sunk cost fallacy, which is we've already put so much effort into this one party and getting things done, and if we just keep working with it, eventually we'll get a return on that investment. And then two, you kind of have that overestimation of your own capabilities and your own influence and how far you can actually get. And I think, and when you're talking about cults or or salesmanship, the worst thing you can do is assume that you are smarter than the system, that everyone who came before you who got corrupted was somehow just inherently less capable than you are. Because the truth is, you don't sell your soul all at once. You don't sell your soul. You don't just wake up one day and go, oh, I'm going to sell the devil my soul for, this car. You sell it piecemeal. Devil asks for pieces of your soul, one piece at a time, until one day it's pretty much all gone, and then he asks you to go out and get more people to sell him pieces of their soul. It's a pyramid scheme, and so it's that kind of mentality that keeps people going in. And the first piece of your soul is signing up and saying, well, I'm going to be a part of this system. I don't agree with it. I think it's broken. It does a lot of bad things, but I'm going to support it by giving them myself. Like they can count me amongst their members when they tell people, well, we have 100,000,001 Democrats. And so, that's just really all I wanted to say about it for at the time being.
All right. No, I think that's you bring up some interesting points, and I think it's going to be a discussion that's going to take more than just a few minutes or even a few hours or a few shows. It's going to be going on all the way through November, and I'm sure long after. And I know Dave actually had a pre-set up piece that he wanted to do to introduce Chris to us. So
Thank you.
I want to go ahead and let him kind of take over for this moment here, and then I think he'll be going to you shortly, Chris. So just be ready. But
Okay.
until then, I think Dave, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for. I think
As soon as you unmute.
my mic is on. Oh,
Dave,
wait,
you're
no,
muted.
In
I'm
Hangout.
muted on Hangouts, but I'm live. I'm live on the air, so I got to get all my buttons pushed. I'm good. Hey guys, great show so far. Really enjoying the conversation, and looking forward to the deep dive into Green versus Dem. And I know that our next guest, Chris Wiggins, has an opinion about that. He's a loyal Democrat, and I put together. He and I met at the March on DNC LA rally, and I put together a little piece introducing you guys to Chris, and then we'll bring him on. So
Thank you, Dave.
I'm going to bring that up.
Doesn't matter as long as you join a revolutionary organization and you leave the Democrats, because the Democrats are the 1%. They're the ones who screwed Bernie.
So on Sunday before the DNC in Philly, 100 or so dedicated Bernie Sanders supporters converged on LA's City Hall in solidarity with 68 other cities across the nation. Speakers included organizers and activists of various groups, all looking to either leave the Democratic Party or change it from within. One Democrat looking to see the party keep its progressive values is Chris Wiggins, California native, inspired by Bernie Sanders at 18 and now at 28 running for the U.S. House.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. How you folks doing? Thank you.
Hang on, Chris. 2 minutes on the
Yeah, I'm
video.
doing well. How you doing?
Hang on 1 sec, Chris.
Obviously.
Okay.
Right? I feel cheated. I know a lot of you feel cheated, right? Corruption happened, all right? As a Democrat, all right, I know a lot of us are saying, you know what, we're going to go ahead and we're not going to be Democrats anymore. We're going to move on from it, all right, because of what the DNC did. Let me tell you, Being a Democrat is something inside of you. It's not just having a little D in parentheses when you're on C-SPAN, all right? It is the values that live inside of you, and I'm going to continue to fight for them, just like Senator Sanders is going to fight for it.
I'm here to show my support for Bernie Sanders and let everyone know that the revolution will not die. When I win my election, we're going to go ahead and keep that revolution alive.
I want to give it up to our good friends at Black Lives Matter. They've been out there for 2 weeks saying enough is enough, protesting, and I'm going to be out there with them as well. You see, when we talk about police brutality, all right, it's often just kind of misaligned and they say, well, no, it was a mistake. The police was protecting himself, all right, and then they don't realize that the victim wants to be protected too, all right. The police are here to protect and serve, all right.
I'm in this revolution because of Bernie Sanders at 18 years old. This is my very first election, all right, and it's going to be my very first victory also.
I'm running in the 37th district. My opponent is Karen Bass. Over about a year and a half ago, she made some statements where she wanted to militarize the police force. All right, Black Lives Matter had already started up. There are countless incidents, all right, of police using brutality, police having just military arms at their discretion, and she said that, you know what, we should go in and give them more of those. What we will be looking to do, all right, in order to get us off this long, distant tunnel of horror that we're facing right now, we're going to craft immediate legislation. I will be talking with Black Lives Matter, all right, and I am talking with the police commissioners board, and I'll be talking with the police unions, all right, and we are going to partner, and we're going to get everyone sitting down, and we're going to make some things happen. Sherry is right. I am a military brat, okay? I lived on 2 of the biggest naval bases in the world, Camp Pendleton and Norfolk Naval Station, all right? When I talk to my friends who have served, and I talk to the people I grew up with from those bases, okay, they want our boys home, and they want that money reallocated to all the parties. We see veterans here all across City Hall, all down Spring Street, right? Patriots, all right? We're all patriots for them when they have that uniform on, right? As soon as that uniform's gone, we just toss them on the street. Patriotism lives forever, all right? So let's keep advocating for them, all right?
We need single-payer health care. We need to go ahead and get all these corporations that don't want to pay taxes. We need to get them to pay their fair share and come back here. We need to end fracking, and we need to end all the offshore drilling as well. You can check me out on www.chriswigginscongress.com.
Okay, I'm going to unmute myself here. Oh, there we go. Oh, wait, let's do this. Oh, there it is.
I was just going to say, Chris, you're going to need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Chris,
well.
your turn to unmute. Everybody needs to unmute. Now,
Okay,
now I think we're all together. Chris, welcome.
Okay, can you all hear me?
We do. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Welcome
Thank you.
welcome to Project Sanity. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. I apologize for being late.
Oh, no worries, no worries. You're a busy guy, and we like to see action in this revolution. So it was great to meet you out at the march, and I was inspired by what you had to say, and wanted to put together that little piece and get you on the air here.
Thank you.
I just want to introduce you to Richard Green. He's our host today. He and I go way back, and I would like, why don't you just give us a little more information about yourself, a little background, and then Richard and Nis and the folks here in the room can ask you some questions about your race.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well, for myself, I was actually born in the great city of Norfolk, Virginia, and lived on a naval base. At the tender age of 7, we moved out to San Diego, and I lived about 1 minute away from Camp Pendleton while my stepdad was stationed in the Navy. I went off to college at the University of North Texas, actually studied political science, and interned, spent my summers interning in Congressman Kenny Marchant, a Republican. Spent those 2 summers interning in his office and interning in the DA's office. I immediately, after hearing their views, decided I needed to hightail it back to Los Angeles, and I came here really for the sole purpose of getting involved in politics. I began working on voter registration with the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. Then at the age of 25, I got a chance to be a board member with the West LA Democratic Club, and I was actually chair member for their voter registration initiatives. Really, after a few months, some of the things I was hearing about, just from their operational standpoint, I decided I wanted to leave and took a little break. Then in 2015, I got to thinking about, hey, this political bug has hit me, and I can't really give up. And a lot of people that were telling me that they really need someone like me to assume leadership. So I just got to thinking around, and I was like, all right, I think it might be time to run. So, I've spent the last 5 years since I've been in Los Angeles. I've worked as a recruiter. I currently work for Hulu. Previously worked for the Walt Disney Company. So I know a little bit about getting people jobs, and I hope that can transition and carry over.
Excellent. That's an interesting story you've got there. And
Thank you.
I've some of the questions that I know that have been plaguing some folks is one of the first ones that comes to mind is
Mhm.
okay, you're up against an incumbent that you did manage to make it into the top two, so congratulations on that,
Thank
by
you.
the way.
Thank you.
Absolutely. But how do you see yourself overcoming the big task of trying to take on an incumbent in a race like this?
Definitely, yeah. I think that the biggest thing is really taxing myself as much as possible in terms of the ground game that we use. That's right now we're going to about 3 or 4 neighborhood council meetings per week. We're doing every weekend. We're spending time doing some neighborhood door-to-door blitzes. So a lot of money's been spent on materials to get the word out there. So the more people that I have involved in helping out, the better I can do. The biggest thing when you look at an incumbent is she's going to have accomplishments, right? Which Congresswoman Bass definitely has, and she's also going to have a lot of money at her disposal. So the biggest thing for me is to be able to beat the money. Money kind of allows you to reach a lot of people through advertising, billboards, and etc. So the biggest thing is my advertisements and my billboards are all going to be people, and them putting up my signs and asking, hey, do you want the Wiggins for Congress yard sign? Hey, here's a flyer that he made. Right, it's nice. It's not just made on the the real cheap copy paper that you get. All right, it feels nice. They don't want to throw it away. They're sharing it to their friends. So doing that and getting out to the neighborhood council meeting, I'm using that to overcome the money side of things. Right, that's going to be a daunting task, but it's old school. We like it, and it worked for Joe Biden back when he was running for Senate. A little bit, obviously, Delaware is probably smaller than this district is, but if he can do it, I can do it too. And when I look at accomplishments and what have you, that's something where I'm really trying to find a way to sort of tailor the talks and say, okay, she has accomplished a lot, but let's take a look at some of the things that she said that she was going to do, some of the things that she says that she stands for, versus what she's actually doing. All right, if somebody's going out there saying that they're anti-fracking, they're pro-environment, yet they're supporting a Democratic candidate who was pro-fracking up until it was politically advantageous, and that's a little bit of an issue when they want to go and support a candidate who says that, okay, well, I'm going to go out there and I'm the person for every black person out there, but they're married to the person that went ahead and created the 1994 crime bill, right? And then particularly the thing I look at is I'm not the type who's going to talk two sides out of my mouth. So I'm not in February 2015 going to say, all right, I want to militarize the police force. And then when I find that it's not popular, I try to shy away, but I'm still having those conversations at different neighborhood council meetings. So so really the biggest thing is kind of looking at her record, looking at what she says, and looking at what she tries to enact. So
So it sounds like, from what I've gathered, that she at least is seen as a reasonably progressive candidate. But what you've found by looking closer at her record is that it seems as though that's more of how her rhetoric that she uses. But when it comes down to crunch time and actually getting these things done, like you mentioned with the militarization of the police, that she takes a stance that does not necessarily line up with the groups that she's purporting to be supportive of and be advocating for, or on their behalf at least.
oh yeah, this is correct. Yes. It's one of the biggest thing that I look at is she and I seem to miss each other a lot when we go to some of the neighborhood council meetings. But on one end, when she's down in South Central, she's saying, all right, she avoids talking the TPP and any type of trade deals, saying, all right, hey, you guys are going to be able to do this. It's going to bring an extra revenue for you. Then when she goes to some of the more Jewish communities within the neighborhood, then all of a sudden, hey, TPP is bad. I've been against it, right? But at the same time, she voted for the TAA, right? And then during the whole TPP debate, she remained quiet until it was actually time to vote. So this is someone that's completely tied to Hillary Clinton. She's completely tied to the DNC, and I do hear a lot of people saying, okay, this is Congresswoman Bass. She's extremely progressive. And then when I'm showing them article after article, all right, this is what occurred, and just don't take my word for it. Or you can get sound bites. You can hear when people ask her questions. So
That's yeah, and I think that's a theme that I think a lot of folks are finding out this election is that for too long we've basically taken either a D by the name or whatever the signifier may be as that I can trust that they have X, Y, and Z positions and that they follow through with them when confronted with that situation. But we've realized, especially, it's been highlighted so much over the last congressional sessions of how that doesn't actually line up. We saw in the Carolinas with Democrats siding with the transgender bathroom bill. We've seen the Trans-Pacific Authority for fast tracking the TPP. Several Democrats signed on with that, and
Yeah.
and so on and so on and so forth. The examples are out there, and I think one of the burdens that we're really coming across as citizens is how do we stay informed about all this? How can we possibly, how does somebody know what's going on in California's 37th district and know the difference between your opponent and yourself? Like, how can we get this type of information? And I appreciate you doing a show like ours, which is one of those avenues, and this, I view, is one of those important things. But what other steps are you taking to try and address that both locally and then that you can possibly assist other Democrats that are in similar situations to you, or people who want to run like you are in the future? What kind of tips or information can you provide them about how you've been able to get that message out?
Yeah, definitely the biggest thing. And if I can just go back to your question, just you're asking how. All right, so what are some of the ways that we can get a consistent message across and really kind of spread well, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, sort of spread the news in regards to our campaigns versus our opponents' campaigns. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, definitely the biggest thing. Yeah. So I say that the biggest thing is really like I've been doing with the neighborhood councils. Like I really gave them like fleeting thoughts like before I became a candidate. Just I was like, all right, well, this is sort of like a situation where you have 40 people or whatever, right? You go to these groups that are about 1,500 people strong. You can look at some of the charter Democratic clubs as well. I think that the biggest thing is meeting with them, discussing things with them, speaking to them, and allowing them to help carry the message is going to be huge. So what I've done, like outside of using those avenues as well, is Facebook. Facebook has been great. Twitter has been great, just in terms of me saying, all right, hey, come check out our campaign. We have a lot that we're talking about. Come, here's a link. Here's a link. We actually have a blog on the campaign site. I say take a look at that as well. I'm actually going to, or when I'm actually speaking at a college, or when I am speaking at one of those chartered Democratic clubs, it's really kind of spreading those news, just saying, hey, come check it out. I have a great videographers, right? So, if somebody's not able to make it, I'm really great about making sure that we can promote what happened in the conversation that we're having at those different events and getting them on social media.
Yeah, it sounds like getting engaged is utterly critical. That you have to be out there, you have to be seeing people, and as you mentioned, without the money to do it through traditional media outlets, you just have to. People have to see your face, and and like going out to the event where Dave ran into you is a great example of how that happens. And I'm glad that we were able to connect as a result of all that. And I hope that other people that are trying to run take an example from that and realize even if you're on a different different political space than those crowds that you're going to, you have to engage, you have to listen to them, and you have to let them speak their mind as far as whatever critiques or criticisms that they may have, and that takes a lot of time and dedication and effort. And I think that's one of the things that, even if I disagree with someone politically, that if I can see that they're honestly engaging with folks, and even if they're coming to different conclusions, that's at least the kind of mentality that we need, more so than folks who hold hold on to ideology in at the expense of hearing what may be a differing but valuable opinion. And so with that, I'm going to let anybody else that wanted to get in here. I know Nis may have some questions, so we'll go with Nis first, and and he'll probably be tough, and then I think Dave will probably hop in there momentarily. So Nis, go ahead.
Hey, Nis.
As soon as you unmute. On Hangouts. Just a moment.
And I'm as always unmuted. Hello, Chris. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, Nis.
I'm 50% of the founding force behind Project Sanity. You just met my better half, basically. So, okay, Chris, why within the Democratic Party? Why not within the Green Party? Do you actually believe that they will allocate fair amount of resources between an incumbent that is pro the